very very pleased to be here and catch you all up on what Megan's been up to, and especially thanks to our wonderful panel for committing the time and intellectual effort. Really helpful, and we're very thankful for that. So thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Janie?
Hi, I'm Johnny Forrest Wyatt. I've known Megan a long time. We went to the same uni, and I'm in private practice in Brisbane. I'm an accredited mental social worker, and I work mostly in trauma, but I also do relationship therapy, instant Gottman therapy.
Great, thank you. Paul?
Good afternoon, everybody. Paul Martin is my name. I am married to the wonderful Megan Bayliss. I am what she refers to as her awesome husband.
Yes, I read that in the acknowledgements.
It's a pleasure to be here today. I'm terribly excited about what's happening, as Megan is, and join with you all in supporting her in her fabulous endeavours.
Thank you. That's good. Bev?
Hi, I'm a PhD candidate at Charles Darwin and met Megan online through some of Tara Brabazon's online forums, which was just fantastic. And then I'm doing a PhD on iPads with Aboriginal languages, working in Northeast Arnhem Land, and then ran into Megan in the restaurant, or the only restaurant in Nhulunbuy, on my last visit up there. So it's funny, we have some synergies there and have some mutual friends.
Yeah, excellent. Great. Karen?
Hi, everyone.
Excellent.
Hello. And look, it's lovely to be here, lovely to see so many of you that I haven't seen for a while. And I'll apologise in advance, Megan. I was going to put a message in chat, but it's just gone 5 o'clock here. And I need to dash for a train soon. So I'm sorry I'm going to miss most of your presentation, but go well.
Thank you. And it's very nice to see you again, Karen.
Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. We'll try and zip through this bit actually then and get started so you don't miss much of the presentation. Jess, briefly just want to unmute and say hi.
Hi guys, I'm Jess, clinical psychologist, PhD candidate, and just a huge Megan Bayliss fan.
Excellent. Thank you. Margaret?
Ditto, and also a Tara Brabazon groupie. I'm in Melbourne. I'm at Deakin and doing an education flavoured PhD part-time and connected with Megan on LinkedIn.
Excellent. Thank you. Yogi, I think. Hello.
Hi, everyone. My name is Bhairav Yogi. I'm one of the PhD students here in CDU. Yeah, just wanting to learn and just observe how it's done. So I'll be here just muting myself and yeah, listening the whole thing.
Thank you. Lolita?
Hi, I'm Lolita Wikander. I'm a lecturer in nursing and I just try to come along as often as I can.
Excellent. Thanks for coming, Lolita. Abby Dayu? Abby Bayu, sorry. Yeah. Go ahead.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Yeah, my name is Avayo Zomatko. I'm a PhD student in Faculty of Health.
Yep.
Just I joined to share some experiences and to see how things are done. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I don't know if I've got everyone on my screen. I'm just realizing that there's lots and lots of people. I thought I only had 10, but it keeps going. So I think that I may actually just stop that, or else we'll end up spending the whole time on introductions. So everyone, welcome. Thank you so much for coming. Look, this is a mid-candidature review. So this is what's going to happen today is that very shortly, I'll hand over to Megan, who's going to do a presentation for about 20 minutes. And following that, then we'll have questions. So it's not this is not a defense of the thesis. It's really a checkpoint and an opportunity to get some feedback to have some guidance and feedback, an opportunity to present. So we also take it quite seriously, I think, as well. But it isn't the formal defense of the thesis. So so we'll move to questions after. We'll start with the panel asking questions, and then we'll open it up for wider questions as well. And we have, it was an hour from when we began. So we started at 3:30. We should finish. We've got that amount of time, but we may not use all that time as well. We'll see how we go. All right. Anything, is that all clear? Megan, are you good to go? Yeah.
Absolutely. So let's begin so we can end. Now, everybody, please jot down questions or comments and responses to rhetorical questions. Either hold to the end, as Andrew suggested, or better, drop comments into the chat. I have a lot to get through in 22 minutes and 36 seconds, and I'm only sharing the tip of the iceberg here. But I also value participation, and everything that you, panel and audience, has to say is valuable data. So this is your experience as much as it is mine. So have your say. There will be time for real-time questions later. Why isn't that changing? Here we go. Although I live in Nhulunbuy, Northern Territory, I'm coming to you today as a digital PhD nomad in Babinda, a rainforest town south of Cairns in far North Queensland. But to begin, I want to join with CDU in acknowledging all First Nations people on the lands that we each live and work on, and I pay my respects to elders past and present, including Witiana Marika, pictured here. I first met Witiana through my wonderful husband, who was COO for Riratingu Aboriginal Corporation. Witiana, from Yothu Yindi, is the cultural ambassador for Riratingu and does Welcome to Country and leads the Bungal dance at ceremonies held on all Riratingu lands. He led with Bungal at the last graduation procession in Nhulunbuy. It was an extremely spiritual and first-class experience. It's the best Bungal and graduation that I have ever been to. So I encourage all of you to come and support Riratingu at the CDU Nhulunbuy graduation this November the 6th and experience the coexistence of vocational and tertiary education with Yolngu knowledge and tradition. This is a two-way academic and cultural experience of respect and immersion like never before. So here, this is CDU's Associate Vice Chancellor of East Arnhem Region, Alice Doyle, with Witiana, and CDU's Vice Chancellor Scott Bowman, as the Nhulunbuy campus received the cultural naming Mathaman from Witiana. Our language matters, and Mathaman means to speak with lightning, which is what I'm about to do so we can get through this mid-candidature review. Words have power. They can help and heal, or they can hurt. Words are more than something we simply hear. They can be thought triggers or marks on a page that create a picture. They create a mind image and they impact cognitively, behaviourally, emotionally, and socially. Words are personal and the personal is political, meaning that the personal is patterned with structural factors underlying the personal experiences. Reading may therefore be a complex set of activities based on experiences. Now, I want all of you to now think about the words in a book, a poem, or a song that impacted you sufficiently to look at or measure against your own life. That is bibliotherapy, the use of the written word to help solve, change, think about, or even prevent a problem. So drop your book now into the chat for all to see. But now I also rhetorically ask, did you lose or find yourself in that book? Were you merely a reader or a thinker, a voyeur or a character? Did you read it as a philosophical practice or to change your immediate life? As panel knows from our unique top-end cultural positioning, our definitions, our linguistics, our language matters. Language then, no matter how it is constructed or received, has an epistemological function. It is a fictitious yet racially philosophical book that led me to take out a social work degree, but it is a deeply introspective poem, The Dash, that influences my thinking around my PhD research question, aims, and design. Now, the following are words written and spoken by poem author Linda Ellis that guide my analytical thinking and analysis. I invite you now to deeply listen, feel, and think, instead of just looking at or hearing the written words. Just let me know if you can't hear it. I'm sure I did turn sound on.
I read of a man who stood to speak at the funeral of a friend. He referred to the dates on her tombstone from the beginning to the end. He noted that first came the date of her birth and spoke of the following date with tears. But he said what mattered most of all was the dash between those years. For that dash represents all the time that she spent alive on earth. And now only those who loved her know what that little line is worth. For it matters not how much we own, the cars, the house, the cash. What matters is how we live and love and how we spend our dash.
So, from the dash to the gap. The literature gap in psychoeducation revealed that best-selling self-help and popular psychology author Professor Brene Brown's books are not linked to either lived experience or the focused psychological strategies. There was little peer-reviewed research supporting the use of her book titles as a structured therapeutic intervention rather than an ad hoc suggestion to somebody to read. Nor was there anything academic linking Professor Brown's theory to creative resistance. Nor was there anything that I could find using bibliotherapeutic book club as a research method and methodology. These gaps led to my significant and original contribution to knowledge, the use of book clubs to probe the development of a psychoeducative evidence base of participants in recovery from a life-changing mental well-being challenge. The major contribution is to challenge the demeriting of the navigational wisdom and lived experience of people with mental well-being challenges following a self-disclosed life-changing event. A brief appraisal about the project to reinforce what panel has already read in my indicative chapters. This dissertation develops a new perspective on Professor Brene Brown's work as psychoeducation. It's about reading as an act of resistance against traditional intellectuals, and it uses book club as both method and methodology. It is highly creative and is informed by the work of DRAW, and DRAW is an acronym for Departing Radically in Academic Writing. So since submitting my mammoth indicative chapter, sorry guys, it has now been modified and streamlined into a preface for positionality, followed by 3 distinct chapters. In keeping with the introspective vein from each of my theories, my positionality as a preface is important for 3 reasons. 1, the discipline of lived experience counts coexistence as either a peer or ally as best practice, and Byrne's National Workforce Development Guidelines calls for priority research into family and carer roles. 2, I am a feminist and consider the personal to be political, a wholehearted tool to be used as both positive connection and creative resistance. And 3, positionality locates my geo-socio-political folk culture position as a regular army child that grew up in an army barracks in a colonised country, Papua New Guinea, with a career soldier father who did 3 tours in an unwanted Australian war. For one of those tours, he was on loan to the CIA, and we lived in secrecy. Due to that, my positionality is quite different to that of many army children who became enculturated to a masculine hegemony. My standpoint is that popular culture is used to enculturate us, but when personal mental well-being experiences of a folk culture aren't heard and valued, the enforced silence creates a cacophony of internal sound. Just as autoethnography is accepted in research, my positionality prefaces my thesis chapters as a way to deal with potential researcher bias and allyship straight up. My perceptual and interpretational frameworks are drawn from the major theories belonging to my 3 philosophers: cultural hegemony from Antonio Gramsci, shame resilience theory from Professor Brene Brown, and the principles, values, and roles from the lived experience workforce development by Dr. Louise Byrne. I have two underpinning theories informed by the focused psychological strategies. For those familiar with the 6 major therapeutic interventions of the focused psychological strategies, bibliotherapy is a passive form of psychoeducation. Bibliotherapy is, of course, underpinned by psychodynamic and self-determination principles. Psychodynamic theory is a Freudian school of thought that emphasizes the importance of unconscious thoughts, feelings, and motivations in shaping human behavior. This layers transparently with Grumskian thought on the evocation of consciousness around cultural hegemony, while self-determination is a core component of recovery within lived experience. So my research question, how can the social sciences enhance the focused psychological strategy of psychoeducation by using book clubs as method and methodology, is informed by 3 aims. There's a dash aim, an evidential aim, and a psychoeducative aim. There is no single definition of resistance, and the terms resistance and revolution are sometimes used interchangeably in personal communications. In the literature, there are multiple definitions and understandings of resistance, including the popular Jungian quote, "What you resist persists." Now, I originally wanted to do a creative thesis on the resistance of craftivism, the marriage of social activism to craft, but I have instead used creative tenets in a traditional thesis. So that includes Leger's 2022 definition of resistance as creative acts as a response to hegemony. My perspective-taking frameworks to measure data against include Brown's 6 Ps of change, so that's personal, pens, polls, participation, purchases, and protests, and Gramsci's longer war of position using persuasion, education, and organisation. So just out of interest, I want you to now drop into the chat, which P do you think that reading The Dash by Linda Ellis may fall into? And now think consciously about these questions. How about attending a book club that held discussions around what that poem may mean for you? Where would that fall? And from a Gramscian perspective, would book club be persuade, educate, or organise? Or consider this: does uncoordinated individual action constitute political intervention? It often depends on the lens through which we view the world, a creative or a traditional one, a counter-hegemonic or a masculine hegemonic one. Our consciousness and our language matters. So heads up, there is a swear word coming in this picture. Meet the wonderful Dr. Kate Just. Kate is a celebrated Australian craftivist who knits to exhibit signs and placards as her creative activism. She creates alone, but exhibits publicly. Measuring against Brown's 6 Ps and Gramsci's trio of change, where do you think Kate's creative acts as a response to hegemony would fit? And then how about Banksy's guerrilla art? Is it vandalism or social comment? Just as there may be multiple definitions of a single concept like resistance or social comment, we all see things differently depending on our positionality, our intersectionality, and our theoretical and in-group biases. The lens through which I view this PhD project are not shades of grey like my hair, but rather the defined disciplines of cultural studies, feminism, and lived experience. I don't locate pathology within individuals, but rather in the social structures of the capitalist culture that individuals survive in. It's 20 months since I began this PhD project, and I am still in love with it. My COC was both a scary and thrilling milestone. At COC, there was chair recommendation that I look at Gramsci's nuances beyond the intellectuals. I've totally honoured this by looking beyond Gramsci's writings on cultural hegemony and incorporated his thinking on the philosophy of praxis, his war of position, common versus good sense, consciousness, and passive revolution. Again from COC, there were suggestions about using yarning as a decolonising methodology. Rather than yarning and to respect cultural protocols, given where I live, I align with the Brene Brown quote that says that stories are data with soul. The stories of my participants' reactions to popular culture or popular psychology are important. And what better way to collect their stories than utilising the methodology of bibliotherapy within a methodology of book club that relies on the methods of reading and book club rather than yarning or storytelling. My sample is small. It's illustrative rather than representative. The preface and chapters 1 to 3 are done with all others underway. Now, with your help, panel, and your support from everyone, I plan to hand to CDU in August, this August. My urgency includes that I identify as a lived experience ally, and I have family who need my support back as quickly as possible. To frame and progress data understanding, I used codebook thematic analysis. Codebook themes were deductive and formed from the 4 research questions. That's the thesis question and my 3 aims. Now, this screenshot illustrates my codebook. The data is rich and full-bodied based on me following the book club discussions rather than leading with set questions. I ran the keywords from all interviews through word cloud to also create inductive themes. Some of these inductive themes have since been blended back into the deductive sets, and I continue playing with whether I should stay with only the 4 deductive themes or the 4 with the separate inductive trends. It has blown my mind. It is not seductive at all, I can tell you. Now, this last screenshot is also from my codebook and demonstrates how I analyse. Transcript in one column, my notes in the next, and lastly, the theme. I completed an industry partnership early as I wanted to understand how book placement influences choice and sale. It was a fully digital partnership with an independent bookstore in Perth. Part of the learning outputs included writing book reviews published to Goodreads and cross-posted to social media, newsletters, and blog sites. Now, all of the postings included the circled disclaimer naming the partnership. Posts also began with an acknowledgement that I was a PhD candidate at CDU. And my awesome husband, Paul Martin, who's online, funded a trip to Perth from Norfolk Island, and I spent time with the owner in the bookstore. While not necessary for me as part of my industry partnership, relationships and connection are very important as part of my positionality and are a demonstration of strategic political engagement within social change movements. So my outputs so far include presenting at last year's HDR conference, where I won 2 awards. Thank you, Steve Greenland, and I hope he's online. I have continually attended continuing professional development, both internally and externally. I did an amazing 2-day thematic analysis masterclass with Dr. Claire Moran. It was wonderful. And a 4-day training in Brene Brown's model of wholehearted leadership. I presented my research at the International Conference of Social Workers in Health and Mental Health in Melbourne. And now, just on these last 2 points, they are not part of my research, but they support my learning and they test the real-world impact of my project and are a remedy to research isolation paralysis. So the photos coming up now are nothing more than social proof, evidence of the outputs. So there's my winnings, presenting. The masterclasses that I attended. Now, again, this one here is social proof, evidence of outputs, and this has come straight out of my thesis, one of the tables. But of interest is that participants were majority professional people, all reading pop psychology following a life-changing mental well-being challenge. Now, this screenshot is evidence from my YouTube channel where I post our non-research associated bibliotherapeutic book clubs and our weekly peer support group for social workers in research. I cannot offer a critique of where my research is at without looking at how life intervened and occasionally derailed my mostly emotionally regulated self. I say mostly because my very patient and respectful supervisors, Dr. Kim Caldwell and Dr. Nathan Franklin, have twice experienced mini meltdowns and dealt with them extremely well. I've had 2 major moves during the last 20 months, and I am not just talking about moving house within the same city. Supervision changes take time to both build a relationship and to develop an understanding of the bones of a research project. There were no bookshops on Norfolk Island, and there's nothing in Nhulunbuy, so it can take absolutely months to get a book that I really want. I've also researched through 3 deaths in under a year. CDU was represented through the then Dean of Research at our brother-in-law's funeral. Our brother-in-law was a prominent person, and people came from all over the world and both sides of politics. So it was a comforting move to us to have the backing of my university at the funeral. Now, many people have heard and read Brene Brown, and lived experience can easily be understood, but Gramsci who? Plus, when I mentioned that he was first the head of the Communist Party in Italy and later the Socialist Party, people's eyes glaze over and conversations are changed. I really am a political orphan when it comes to discussing Gramsci with friends and family. Thank God for digital supervision and networks. So despite PhD derailments, I am proud that I have never given in. I know what has to be done, and my thesis outline is my diary and constant companion. I have a very clear plan of what needs to be achieved to finish early, and I'm deeply appreciative of your ongoing help to get me there. This may be my thesis, but I am representing CDU, and I would love to be part of your international growth. I would love to talk to potential students in London and say, against all odds, I pulled off a fully digital PhD from CDU while living on Norfolk Island in the middle of the South Pacific Ocean, and then Nhulunbuy in outback Australia. Now, although I'm still combining themes and writing, so far I have found that the 3 theories complement each other with a strong correlation between Gramsci and Brown. There is a reader difference between self-help and popular psychology. Readers also didn't know that bibliotherapy is a passive form of psychoeducation. Readers don't discriminate between listening and reading. Both are introspective and reflective. Brown's books are alone insufficient to change a personal lowercase lived experience to the professional uppercase lived experience. Timing and organised thought, discussion and training are absolutely required. Book Club offers increased catharsis, insight and universalisation, but also offers a collective ritualistic step between individual resistance and strategic political engagement. The veracity of bibliotherapy increases based on who recommends the book. Now, a warning for choosing assessors. I have a number of sound bites embedded into chapters, and there are some swear words from participants as they emotionally express reactions to authors or content. Now, Witiana, that featured on my first acknowledgement slide, will lead the bungal at the graduation ceremony in Nhulunbuy this November. I want more than anything to graduate within culture on Riratingu land, surrounded by the personal and professional relationships that I have with the Riratingu. I want to honour them by being the first PhD to graduate from Mathaman. I would love to also be supported at graduation by my 2 supervisors, Kim and Nathan. I could not have fast-tracked the way I have without their support. Their presence at my graduation would show respect to Nhulunbuy by them being invited in a very special ceremony, by being involved in a very special ceremony that is associated to their Riratingu Corporation. And I also lined it up last year with Alice Doyle and Professors Bolton Wallace that I get to carry the mace this year if I can pull off the floppy hat in time. So I also intend to publish my thesis as narrative nonfiction, pop psychology. I will be applying for a Churchill Fellowship to do a Gramscian pilgrimage, and that will include launching my book at Gramsci's grave to honour his dash. I will continue to research, write, workshop, keynote, and run book retreats. And of course, I'm going to continue with the research group and book club because they have proved invaluable support to many people. Finally, thank you to Kim and Nathan, who inherited me at my worst, but they continue to steer me to my best, which is PhD conferment. And thank you to panel members for contributing time and expertise to help drive this to the August submission date. I aim to do CDU proud for a long time to come. Thanks, everybody. And now for the annihilation.
Not at all. So I'm trying to find my clubbing thing. I'm less familiar with Zoom. So anyway, well done.
Thank you.
And take a breath. Look, that was a very engaging and energetic presentation. Really, really great. So I think we've got a good sense of what you've been doing and where things are at. So can I move first to the panel for questions, please? Who wants to go first?
Hi, Andrew. I was just going to say, I'm happy to cede my time to the floor because I've sort of had a bit of an opportunity to do some reading, and there'll be some other opportunities. So it might be that there's some people on the call that want to ask some questions first, and I'm happy for them to take mine.
Sure. Okay. What about Tinashe? Did you want to ask any questions?
I really thought that your presentation, Megan, was outstanding. Really and truly, and I'm so glad that I had the opportunity to listen to you speak. As Andrew said, you're very engaging and very have a bold presence that's really wonderful to kind of talk about some dense research items and theory and epistemology and ontology, but I think you've made it really accessible, and you've tied that in really nicely into what your research is. And I really loved the presentation also of your data analysis and how you're actually doing that in a systemized and systematic way. Often that's kind of one of the trickiest parts, along with theory, which you've explained very well. So it's great how you've presented that. And of course, your next steps. And I guess really looking forward to that kind of publication that you'll come up with that's going to actually help people to use bibliotherapy. That's a relatively new kind of clinical framework in my perspective. So really, my only question is, how do you think the work that you are doing can be integrated into, I guess, or disseminated into, I guess, clinical spaces for people to be able to share this with their clients or with their, groups that they are teaching into, for example?
Very interesting question. And I've paid a lot of attention to the way other practitioners practice. So given that we've got really long waiting lists in most therapeutic practices, I'm seeing book club using a bibliotherapeutic methodology as a way to engage people while they're waiting to see their therapists. Now, I'm not suggesting that bibliotherapy will ever replace the one-on-one. The research is quite clear that it doesn't. There needs to be some organization, and the one-on-one reflection is very important. But we lose so many people, and the suicide stats are really high. Like terrible across the world, 1 every 40 seconds. So if we can engage people early by running a book club, you only need one staff member to be able to run that book club and to engage with people. Now, I've been a therapist for over 30 years, so I have the engagement down to pat. And the research also suggests that it's not so much the therapeutic framework that you use, it is your ability to be able to engage with that individual immediately. So if we can use book club as an adjunct before somebody gets to that therapeutic relationship, it might be a really great start. But also, because I'm going to publish as narrative nonfiction or pop psychology or self-help, it actually depends on how the booksellers place the books. I want to make it very easy for anybody to be able to read this stuff and understand it. So I'm not just publishing for an academic audience, it's for a much wider audience as well. So I hope, Tinashe, that answered the question.
Yeah, very well. It's making me, so in part of my other life, I'm a clinical psychologist, and I'm often recommending books to people in between therapy sessions. I say, please go and take a look at this Brene Brown book or at this XYZ book between our sessions so that you can kind of do the work. But also what you're noting here, which, hopefully it has a place within the thesis, is really the group therapy component. And this is another modality for that in a very real and accessible way that is less scary then
Yeah.
let's all sit in a circle and talk about what's wrong with us.
Yeah, yeah.
This is a much more accessible. So yeah, thank you so much, you know, for that reinforcement, but also for the I guess impact this will have moving forward. That's really all I have to say. This is great work. Lovely.
Thank you, Tinashe.
Just a question from me, Megan. I was thinking about, you know, you talked about the three theoretical frameworks that you were drawing on, and I suppose the complementarity, if that's the right word, how they might complement each other. Are there any tensions though as well? I suppose I was wondering about any kind of tensions either with that or more broadly, perhaps focused psychological strategies,
Yeah.
and bibliotherapy, perhaps.
Yeah. Look, of course, there's always the contradictions, and you can't step into the political space without there being a lot of tension, you know, a lot of contradiction. Between the lived experience literature and some of Gramsci's literature, there are some great contradictions because Gramsci wasn't a therapist. Like he was an activist. Whereas the lived experience activism is for people with lived experience. But I do find that the similarities are more interesting to me than the contradictions. So all of the three theorists identify as having lived experience. So I'm looking at that. And of course, the contradictions will be in one of the chapters. And I wish you could see the chapters that I now have, because the three of you got this mammoth thing, and I apologize. It wasn't until after I had already sent it in that I went, oh no, I need to change this around to make it easier to read. But yes, those contradictions are everywhere. This is not something you can do without mentioning them. And even in the data, there are contradictions and major contradictions between who people like to read. And my research assumption has been blown out of the water. I was completely wrong with my assumption. So in the methodology chapter, there will be a lot of talk about that.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So I'll open it up to the floor if there are other comments or questions. Don't be shy.
I just want to say well done, Megan. It was great, really engaging, really enjoyed it. And I am super excited by your idea about graduating in Nhulunbuy, because I had not thought of that for me. And with all the people I work with mine, I'm thinking, oh, I've written that down. Let me see whether it's an option.
Look, Bev, it was amazing. Last year, I had goosebumps. And I grew up in Papua New Guinea. I've lived on Cape York Peninsula. I'm very familiar with different cultures. Both of our sons-in-laws are from different culture. But what happened at the graduation in Nhulunbuy was unbelievable. It was fantastic. So yes, for you, getting everybody in from Yirrkala and the homeland is very important.
Yeah, super exciting. But no, well done. Fantastic.
Thank you.
Just unmute and ask your question.
Me? Okay,
Yep.
sorry, I'm ironing at the same time. Wonderful presentation. Yes, very engaging. And I'm probably getting really granular here, but I was curious about the people who were part of like your workshop, your online workshop. And I think you also did people like who couldn't attend, who did it separately, and whether they benefited as much from the bibliotherapy as those who are part of the group.
That's a very interesting question, and I have put a lot of thought into how I present their information, because the people who attended the book clubs, where there were multiple people, they got a lot out of hearing how other people were interpreting the text, or how they were talking about how they've applied the text to their own lives. Whereas where there were, I think there was 3 where I did individual interviews with them, and they didn't get the richness of hearing other people. So I did even at one stage think I might have to leave that information out. I chose not to, because sometimes people will have a conversation outside of a group. They're too shy to say it in front of other people. And everybody knew that I was collecting data. We had an understanding about that. So everything was recorded. everything had gone through ethics as well, obviously. But yeah, this is interesting. How do you manage that when people learn so much from other people? Yeah. But thank you, Margaret. Interesting question.
I think Kim's put his hand up. Go ahead, Kim.
Sorry, Megan, this is the part where I reveal that I always ask my students challenging questions.
Hang on, aren't we out of time now?
It's maybe more of a thinker, but it's something I touched on in your COC, which at the time wasn't a supervisor, but was very interested in. And to Andrew's point about tensions, what do you theorists, or what do you think as someone attempting to kind of integrate or find the complementarity? Where's the tension at the moment around the quote unquote worried well? Have you thought much on that and how they fit into this piece? I'm thinking in terms of, better access scheme, that report that came out recently. Where do the worried well fit in this?
Okay, so are you aware of what's happened in the book publishing world just very recently with they're not going to be publishing paperbacks anymore?
No.
Yeah, so the worried well can afford to buy a hardcover book. Right, so they can pay the extra $30 or whatever it costs to buy that. Whereas a lot of the people that we deal with clinically are going for either free ebooks or audio books, or they go to libraries. So this tension is actually cutting out a whole section of book publishing. And then you've got the current argument over AI and ebooks. Lots of people have published in ebooks, and those ebooks have been used to train AI. So again, Kim, I'm not sure how this is going to go into it, but when I look at my participants, most of them are worried well. I attracted 53% of my participants were social workers. I think there was only one unemployed person in my cohort. The rest were all employed. Yeah, so interesting. And I will be writing in the methodology that this is illustrative. It is not representative. Yeah.
Thanks.
But thank you for that reminder, Kim.
Thank you. Okay, Julie.
Julie, hello. You're on mute. You're on mute. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. What you mentioned that I think you said your research question was blown out the water. What was it, and how did that affect your methodology or your data collection, blah, blah?
Yeah, so it was my assumption that was blown out of the water. It didn't affect a data collection because I didn't realize until after I had collected all of the data that, man, I was wrong. Yeah, I was really wrong. My assumption was that reading a book would be enough to help change somebody from the personal lived experience to the professional lived experience. And the capitalized LE, lived experience, is where somebody uses their own lived experience to then help another person. So I was wrong, like 100% wrong. Actually, I think there was only one participant who said that she would never, ever go to a therapist. She goes straight to books and solves her problems by reading books. But everybody else talked about the value of discussing it with friends, family, their own book clubs. And a quote from one of them was, my book club is strangely important to me. I can't live without my book club. And she wasn't talking about data collection book club. It was just general book club. Yeah. Yeah. So I'll put it in my methodology chapter, but it didn't change anything. It's just, I was wrong.
It was really interesting. Thank you.
Thank you, Julian. It's very nice to see you again.
I just related to that, I wondered if the concept or peer support, basically, if that's kind of come through a bit in the literature as well.
So lived experience peer support, or just?
Well, I guess when you're talking about the book club and so it's the participation element, I think, and the connection and the relationship. Well, that's what I was thinking when I was reading your stuff, that being really important. And then I suppose I was thinking about the connections of that then to the notion of peer support and how that might have a positive impact on people and might be part of it. I mean, it may just be coming at it from a different perspective or a different way, though the moving from small L live to capital.
Yeah, yeah.
Which, by the way, I thought was really helpful to have the bibliography and the explanation.
Yeah, yeah.
The
So,
glossary, rather, sorry.
Yeah, as Brene would probably know, because she was involved in the Northern Territory data collection for the workforce development, peer work is really being looked at. And what I think could happen is that a new position could be created for a peer worker to actually be running these book clubs, a bibliotherapeutic book club, because you don't actually need any particular training to run a book club. You just need to follow the methodology. That is all. And you need to have some sort of an inquiring mind to look beyond the text, to be able to read the subtext. So that's something that any of us can be teaching to other people. So yeah, there could be a special position that is created. But in terms of peer supports, I facilitate every Monday morning, we have an online social workers in research peer support group where we all support each other and learn from each other. And that includes the stuff that we're reading. So we often will share a book. Doug, who was here somewhere, there's Doug, yeah, I see him there. Doug put me onto a book that I'm absolutely in love with it, and I can't believe that I hadn't come across it before. So that's ad hoc. But it could be better organised. And of course, then Gramsci goes on to talk about the organisation, which somebody will eventually read in my dissertation. Yeah. Or Kim.
Excellent. Any other questions from anyone? I've got one more, but I can. What was the expression Brene used? Feed the ground or the floor or something. I can provide an opportunity for someone else if they want to have a go first.
Go ahead, Andrew.
All right.
Your explanation of not asking the question
has taken up the time of asking the question. Just get on with it. Thank you. So I guess that one of the things that we want to check, and I think you've addressed this a bit, so I don't want to be too leading with it, but have you faced any challenges or any problems that might impact your progress? And when I say that, I think you've addressed it because I think the big one that kind of comes through is the changes in terms of the supervisory team, and well, you've had personal changes and moves and other things, but in terms of, I guess, what we what you fed back in the paperwork. So I guess, yeah, is there anything?
Yeah, look, I had seven supervisory changes in a 12-month period. And to me, that's unacceptable. Now, I am a social work supervisor. I've supervised for many, many years, and I stick with my supervisees through thick and thin. So it was a shock to me as a professional to come into another organisation that I thought was going to be very professional and have such constant changes. But I'm also incredibly resilient. I have post-traumatic growth like you would not believe. So, I have more front tooth than a rat. With a change, I move on. But Kim knows how distressed I was after the last change. But I didn't, and Jess is here as well. So Jess was very aware of that, and Doug. There's a couple here that knew what went down. But I didn't sit around waiting for the university to give me another supervisor. Like I'm proactive. So yes, bad things happen to good people all over the world every single day. So I just got on with it. I moved on and I contacted Kim, whom I had liked what he said at my COC. It clicked with me. And I just said, Kim, are you interested? And you're not allowed to say no. Yeah, so that was hard and it has continued. It has impacted me. Absolutely.
And I think that's totally valid and important, I think, to acknowledge. It sounds like it's stable now. Yep, so touch wood and don't go anywhere, Kim.
Kim.
Kim. But I just wanted to kind of say as well, when I was reading through this, your work, I suppose I was mindful of that. And then I was thinking about it in relation to the experiences of people accessing psychological mental health and wellbeing support. And I was thinking the system is one of a lot of churn and turnover as well. So I was thinking of the parallel between the disruptions that you have experienced and the challenges and what that was like for you as a researcher, and how that might mirror as well what goes on in the system, particularly with I was thinking about some kinds of focused psychological strategies which are quite, they minimize the relationship. They're quite manualized and short term. Whereas I think that sometimes what's required or what people want and need from the system is something where the relationship's more central to that. So I think that parallel, and wondering if as well that might be coming through in the data as well somehow, the data collection.
What did come through loud and clear was that participants liked hearing from the other participants.
Yeah.
So if we, even though my participants were mostly professionals, right? 53% social workers, and then the others were, bar one, were from other professions. So if we look at them as a microcosm of society, we can then pull that across to juxtapose it with other people. They're going to like to learn from others as well. But yes, our turnover is unacceptable, but so is the amount of sessions that we allow people under Medicare, right?
But so I say it's kind of baked into the system.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm looking at creative resistance. Like this is the system that we've got. This is the system that we have to survive in. And there's things that all of us can do. But Gramsci is very clear that individual resistance is insufficient, right? So just picking up on your tension before, that's where he and Brene have real tensions, because Brene Brown says, you know, individual is great, but it's like counselling.
Yeah.
Doing one thing at a time is a start. Right? So you're taking incremental steps with people. You're building on one thing after another to help move them along. But if we do book clubs, and it could be, I don't know, an agency might have a favorite book, and they just run that book ad infinitum, and they have different participants. Or it could be like I did. I used all 8 of Brene Brown's titles, and we did one a week. So I had people for 8 weeks, and it wasn't always the same people. Some people came to every single one, whereas others chose just to come to the one that they were interested in, or the one that spoke to them. So yeah, this is interesting, and this is something I'd like to think a lot more about, Andrew, because it's as I'm responding to you, I'm realizing that, Jesus, there's another gap here. Like there's something here that I can really get my teeth into. But I do want to stop at 80,000 words, hey?
It may be a further line of inquiry. That's a way to note that. Now, I just want to, I don't know whose hand went up first, but I see Tinashe and Jody have their
Jody
hands
was
up.
first.
Jody was first. Go ahead, Jody.
Hi, Megan.
Hello, Dr. Jody.
I absolutely love what you are doing here with your research. I love your passion and your dedication and your resilience. You're incredible, just as you always have been. I've known Megan for a long time, and she's always been amazing. But I just wanted to ask, out of curiosity, apart from realizing you were wrong about your assumption about people's ability to learn and grow from just reading a book, I probably haven't summarized that very well, but were there any other surprises for you with your research so far?
Yeah, the biggest surprise for me was that what I understood as pop psychology and self-help was the opposite of what participants, not all participants, but most participants thought. So I've had to keep going back and checking transcripts all the time just to make sure that I'm completely understanding what participants were saying. And then I've had to check it and with many people, including Jody, you'll remember Dr. Greta. So Greta and I had many conversations around the way people perceive information and the way I have perceived it. You know, I was wanting to check, am I right or wrong, basically? Yeah, have I got this right? And Greta had a completely different, she sided with participants, not with me. So when she went to the definition, she said, actually, I think you're right. Yeah, so it's interesting, but maybe we are wrong. Maybe participants are right. And when I'm writing to sell, I want to be able to pitch at what normal people understand, like normal people, not academics. Yeah.
So normal people.
Yeah, normal people. Yeah, yeah, not like you, Mom. Yeah. But
Okay,
thank you, Jodie, and lovely to see you.
Just Tinashe.
Yeah, we definitely are a strange lot. It's true. So I just had a question about more in terms of methodology and just kind of thinking about with qualitative research, the importance of qualitative research rigor. And of course, it's very different from quantitative research credibility, but you know, validity, reliability, that kind of stuff. Have you thought about trustworthiness in relation to qualitative research and including that in, I guess, your methodology to kind of ensure or demonstrate that you've done an assessment of I guess the data as well as your analysis and interpretation within the framework of qualitative rigor?
Yeah. Okay. So comparing to, there's no other studies that have done this. So I can't compare to exactly the same thing, but I can look at data that has come out of other book clubs and how they've presented. So I can do that, and I can look at definitions as a way to offset what I think I am seeing. But in terms of the difference between the qualitative and the quantitative, my darling husband over there, who is at the moment, he's on that side, he's beside me. Paul Martin is my husband. He's the numbers man. I don't do numbers. So I sometimes go to him and say, can you help me with this table? What does this mean? So that is very handy, but I do stay with the qualitative stuff, and it's just looking at other people's stuff. In terms of robustness, I have my office absolutely set up so that, like, if ever I'm questioned on how I store data or how do I analyze data, I've got all of that down to pat. And that was Tara Brabazon that just, she drove that into many of us who are here today. Like, this is what you have to do. Yeah. So I also got somebody that I can say, well, I'm getting this from, you know, Professor Brabazon.
Yeah, thank you. It would be useful because trustworthiness is a whole other concept. So maybe take a look at that to help you to demonstrate this fantastic research and make it bulletproof.
Yeah, thank you. And that's what I want, because I'm aiming for a return with no corrections.
Right.
Thank you.
Exactly. So check out trustworthiness.
Yeah, thank
you.
you.
If you have any questions.
Yeah, thanks.
Excellent. Okay, so we need to draw it to a close. So oh, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, is there time?
Yeah, we're just a little bit over time. If we can run over a little bit longer, that's all right.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that. Sorry, I lost the little hand that you put up. It's gone amiss somewhere. But no, like, I just had a quick question. And look, if this is more of a 30-minute discussion, then yeah, maybe we'll chat about it some other time. But look, I was really interested in positionality, and I know that you're bringing into it that second wave feminism, which I don't know as much about. I'm a third wave baby, but I thought it was really interesting just in your thinking and responding to Tinashe's question around qualitative research and the positionality of the researcher. And earlier you sort of mentioned the idea of researcher bias, and look, there's a lot of different ways to approach this and a lot of different standpoints, but if you have time, I would love to hear just a little bit of the lens that you took and thinking about your research, but also getting into the stories.
So I try to put my own stuff aside, and I know that as a feminist, I cannot, because the personal is political, right? Including the things that are said about Brene Brown online. Like, she's really derided, particularly by academics and then also the incel movements. So there's these two groups. Now, because I am feminist, my politics are instantly against the incel movement. So I try to put all of that aside, and I can demonstrate that in one of my participants who was a great lover of Andrew Tate's stuff. So that was very difficult for me to hear that. And I had to be consciously aware of what my own biases were. Yeah? So that's more about bias than feminism, because I am a feminist, but that is the lens. I'm straight up about that. And I think, did I put it out? I must have. If you picked up on it, I had it in my, my chapter that you received. But I don't know that it has influenced the way that I have interacted with people, because I am a therapist. I'm a therapist before anything else. And it's the interactions that I control when I'm with people. I'm very aware of how I impact my clients. So I control all of that. The feminism is more about, and the lived experience, the positionality. I am a white middle-class woman. I had a privileged childhood. My father was an army officer. I went to very good schools. I wanted for nothing. So that is probably more of a problem for me than feminism. Second wave, I don't see that as an issue, because the second wave of feminism fought for equality, and I still fight for equality in reading. I fight for equality in most of my social media posts with what's going on across the world at the moment, particularly with the removal of DII status in the US. So I'm aware of it, and I can put a barrier up, but it's my poor husband that afterwards he cops it. And Kim as well cops it. But I hope that's answered your question, that I am acutely aware of my own stuff.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. So I think we'll draw it to a close there now. So thank you very much. Well done, Megan. I hope you didn't feel annihilated, or I can't remember what the other option was, but
Terminator? I don't know. Yeah.
You know, so well done. Thanks to everyone for participating. So we'll draw it to a close. Can I just ask